Hey everybody, welcome to my top 10 games of 2021. I'm really excited. This obviously takes a lot of time and just like whittling down to 10, and you know what? I looked at my list and I'm sure I've played at least, if not more, 50 of the brand new 2021 games. That is just surprising how many of those brand new games, not counting all the other games that I've played like Anno 1800 from 2020 and other games like that are not on my list. These are going to be the games that were released in 2021 that I could get my hands on. And again, out of the 50, I'm giving you my favorite 10 and then 5 runners up. So I hope that you can get a pretty good idea of what I liked, what's really cool out there, and you're also going to get what I'm calling a surprise stinker list. These are the 5 games that I played that were released in 2021 that did not impress me. For whatever reason, I will give you that reason when I name those games. I usually don't do stinkers, but there were a couple stinkers. So I will share those with you. Let's just jump right into this list. Starting with number 10, my 10th favorite game of 2021 was Furnace. Furnace is such a clean, clever, and short. When I say short, it's about 30 to 60 minutes to play. It's an engine building game. So when you think about engine building, you've got this area that you have in front of you where you are trying to work it. I mean, it is all about puzzling out your best move. And in Furnace, there are essentially 2 aspects to the game. You've got your engine that you're building, but you also have this really interesting player by player bidding. And the bidding is really fascinating because there's a reward for people who don't win the card, and the card essentially goes into your area, which becomes an engine part that you can run. And so it becomes like a factory of some kind or some way to generate the resources and victory points that you need to win the game. So the way that players bid is with these discs that are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, and it depends on how many players you have and how many discs you get because of that player count. So it might differ. Just check the rules for your 2, 3, or 4 player game, and you put your discs out on cards that you want or that you want the bonus of. So when you don't win the card, you actually get the thing that's at the top. And it, of course, is based on the number that you put there. So there's this level of, I want the resources or the benefit at the top of the card, but I don't want the card, so I'm going to bid low. But then you might actually outbid other people because nobody wants to take the card at all. And so it's fascinating. And then when you get your cards at the end of the round, you get to run your machine. It's so clever, and I really enjoyed Furnace. I enjoyed the theme, and I enjoy how short it is compared to some other engine building games out there. Okay, my number 9 game is Cubidos. I played this game early on in the year, and I was so surprised how much I liked it from the start. It has one of my favorite game mechanics, which is reaching into a bag and pulling out workers or dice and having those workers be my placement or be my actions. So it kind of combines that kind of like worker action, but it also has dice in it. And this game is kind of endlessly replayable because there are so many maps that you can play on, and your dice stay the same, but their actions might change based on the characters that you add to the game. There's a lovely mechanism where if you bust, you get progress in some way. There are lots of choices to be made. There is an element of press your luck, and I really like that aspect of this game and many games as well. So I enjoy Cubidos a lot. It's a 2 to 4 player game, plays pretty fast. You can play a track in about an hour, and I just like the game. I like the way it plays, and I still to this day have not yet played with all the different cards and combinations of cards and maps. But it's a game that I love pulling out and that I love playing anytime. So give me a game of Cubitos, I'm there. My number 7 is Biblios, Quill and Parchment. This is the roll and write version of Biblios, and I like this game so much. It is a really cool balance of stuff that happens in the beginning of the game. It's the first half. There are 4 rounds where you're building up and you're building up and you're rolling dice and you get some choices with those dice, and players are kind of just in this little tiny bubble of their own. And then in the second half of the game, it opens up. There are 4 rounds after that where everything you have built up you start to bid with and you start to vie for and you start competing with some of the other players to nab up all of the kinds of resources and actions that you need to really maximize your score. So players have this sheet in front of them and they just keep track of all of their scored points. They keep track of all of their progress with the 5 different book types. And there's also this little trail that they keep track of that gives them all these cool bonuses. It plays 1 to 4, and I haven't played with the solitaire version, but I know that if I want to play it and no one's around, I can actually play this game and kind of get that Biblios Quill and Parchment fix, which is kind of great. There's wonderful set collection here and a little bit of press your luck because there's a chance to re-roll your dice in the beginning 4 phases as you're kind of building up all those resources. I really like Biblios Quill and Parchment. My number 7 is Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition. I was super excited about this coming out, and the thing that I like the most about this game after playing it is the wonderful fusion of Terraforming Mars, which is a bigger, heavier, more component-laden game, along with Race for the Galaxy with the card selection or the action selection. That, to me, pairs 2 really good games, in my opinion, and makes it into this totally different experience that has those feels and those kind of like themes and worlds and mechanics and makes this game really, really cool. Now, I'm going to say that I don't think it actually shortens the game. Every time I've played Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition, it's been kind of just as long as playing Terraforming Mars or Race for the Galaxy. Not any shorter, which I kind of assumed it would be because it's the card version. But what it does do is just requires that you take out less stuff. I mean, there just are fewer components and fewer pieces. You have a much, much smaller map. It's streamlined in that sense, but for me, it doesn't take any less time. And so it gives me the feel that I want, but in a much, much smaller game and a much easier game to pull out and put back. So when I'm talking about those card selections that are like Race for the Galaxy, the actions you take are based on these particular phases. You only activate and play in a particular phase if someone chooses it at the start of the round. So everyone's going to have this selection where I say, oh, I want to take phase 2. Well, then my other players that I'm playing with might select phase 2, but they might also select other phases. So whichever phases get selected by the players, everybody gets to do. And that's just a really cool feature that comes from Race for the Galaxy. And then on the Terraforming Mars side, you've got this tiny Mars map, and you can essentially do all the same things like raise the oxygen level, and you can raise the temperature, and you can add oceans to the map. And so you are taking these tiles and raising those meters, crossing particular thresholds that give you bonuses. And of course your cards are going to give you bonuses. So you can generate a whole bunch of green cards, blue cards, or disaster cards. So it gets that feel of like Terraforming Mars. You've got those really cool corporations that are giving you a start bonus that's different from everyone else. Such a clever fusion. I really like Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition. And again, it will come out when I want to not fuss with just the giant Terraforming Mars, and I want to get the feel of both of those games in the same game night. My number 6 is Sleeping Gods. Yeah, this is a great cooperative adventure game that uses this giant storybook, this spiral-bound notebook that takes you on this adventure wherever you want to go, doing whatever you want to do. It has this kind of choose-your-own-adventure feel to it where you get choices. Would you like to do this, this, or this in a particular scenario? And in some cases, you have to really exhaust a lot of player actions or benefits to really achieve what you want to get. But there's this giant map, essentially, of where you can go. And on each map, you open up a book to that particular map's quadrant, which means that there are so many different kind of blown up map images that allow you to stop at islands, go down and dive into the deep of the ocean, go up north to where it's icy, and kind of like go through fog and just meet all of these wonderful people and stories, and you just get quests and you just do all of this as the crew of the Manticore. So no matter how many players you have, you're just going to divvy up all of the different characters and you're going to play those characters. I played with a 3-player game for a legacy, essentially, or a campaign all the way through one time until we got to the conclusion of that game. And I think we played between 15 and 20 hours. It was loads and loads of fun. I can't wait to pull it out again and try another direction to go and do other things. But it was just so exciting and vivid and creative and just lovely. So I really, really enjoyed the feel of Sleeping Gods. I liked the turns. I liked the cooperative nature of it. I do feel like we had to take a lot of notes and pictures and, to keep track of setting up for next turn so that we had all the same stuff and put things in baggies. So there's a little bit of upkeep and maintenance that kind of gets a little fiddly, and you have to have a lot of space to play the map, and you've got to have time to continue each time you play. So keep that in mind, that it is time consuming, but there's something really wonderful about this, and knowing that I can play even more and more adventures, going to the places that I didn't go to the very first time around. So, Sleeping Gods, a wonderful cooperative adventure full of creativity and exploration. Before I move on to my top 5 games of the year, I would like to mention that there are 5 games that are reprints, second editions, or very similar standalone games that I already have or have played before that came out that I just wanted to mention because they're really good. It's just that I have already played them. So the first one that came out is Great Western Trail, and I have not played second edition, but we have first edition, and we also have second edition too. But I'd like to get that on the table. But Great Western Trail is one of my top games. I really, really liked Great Western Trail a lot. And so I'm excited about this second edition, what it offers. Probably not that much, but that's okay. Sometimes Lewis and I just get a little goofy about buying games that we already have, just new editions of them. So I'd like to shout out that actually came out this year. And if you're looking to buy Great Western Trail, the second edition is out and you should definitely get it. The next game is Tinner's Trail. I like Tinner's Trail. I like Martin Wallace. And Tinner's Trail is now a re-release, and we got that too. I don't know what it offers, if it offers anything new. There was like a kind of an expansion or just a little kind of addition that I know that the second edition came with, and so that's going to add maybe just one slight difference, but I really like the game. So that came out. If you're looking for a really great, medium level strategy game, get Tinner's Trail. It's lovely. I think it's fantastic. It's such a great theme too. It just like makes sense based on what you're doing, and so it's just really good. Another game is Horrified: American Monsters. Now this has pretty much the same map configuration. It has the same tile usage. It has the same villager cards and needs, but it changes out the monsters from the original Horrified to American Monsters. That's it. Now the monsters do function in a completely different way, and they ask you to do different things. So that's why it works as a standalone, but if you have Horrified, it's just the same game, but with new monsters and new monster abilities. So your characters all do the same thing individually, the villagers function the same way, and the event cards that come up do all the same kinds of things, where they activate them, they move, they fight, and they nab up villagers and stuff like that. So it's the same game, just new monsters for a different feel. I got a chance to play this at Board Game Geek Con. Great. It was great. So yeah, thumbs up on the American Monsters. It just is still Horrified. Another is Cartographer's Heroes. If you saw my holiday gift giving special video, you saw that I have the Cartographer's Deluxe Edition, and it has heroes in there along with other maps and other kinds of things like volcanoes with like nebulous and things like that. So I played with heroes just last night, and I thought it added a really interesting component or element to attack or prevent damage from monsters that show up in the game. And it kind of added this strategy to it that was not just you trying to get the goals, the A, B, B, C, C, D, D, A, and also just covering up around your monsters. It kind of gave you a new element to it. I wouldn't say that it absolutely changes the game and you should totally get it just because of heroes, but if you have cartographers, try heroes and maybe some of those other maps in the deluxe for cartographers. Lastly, I played World of Warcraft Wrath of the Lich King, which is a pandemic style game. So it has all the same pandemic things like escalation and breakouts and cards. But this game is different. It's different enough that it's wholly standalone in the way that the cards function. The cards give you particular kinds of actions that you can do, and everyone's able to move around on their turn, but the board is divided into 3 zones, and the Lich King jumps from zone to zone, creating really hard challenges for players to overcome. And I found the game to be really balanced in the sense that it seemed kind of hard or impossible at first. You can feel overwhelmed with the little minions, you can feel overwhelmed with the bigger minions, which are harder to kill, and they kind of just stomp around causing damage. But players actually have a hit count, and they can go to 0. They can KO essentially. And so you're worried about your health. You're worried about doing these particular actions at these special places that are your goals. And so instead of curing diseases, you go to this one location and you're able to make progress by rolling dice. Now, there's dice in the game, so beware of that. And so you might get incredibly lucky. Sometimes you might get incredibly unlucky other times. But it does really kind of like balance out in the end. And I played a 3-player of this. It's very fun, and it's just different enough to make it feel like a different game. It does have that World of Warcraft kind of IP that's attached to it, so I think that might be part of it, but it's not just a full grab. It's a new game. It uses Pandemic in a really interesting way. Okay, back to my top 10 list. I am now at my number 5. It is Seven Wonders Architects. I had no idea what to expect when I played this the first time, and I guess it's because we've had Seven Wonders, then we've had all the different expansions for Seven Wonders throughout the years, then we had Seven Wonders Duel, and let me tell you, that Seven Wonders for 2 players, a phenomenal game, like a fantastic 2-player game. Which again was surprising, and I don't know why I was surprised, but I was, because I like architects. It's a 2 to 7 player game that simplifies Seven Wonders and makes it almost to where I don't need to play Seven Wonders again. Like, I wonder, do I really want to get out all the stuff and separate all the cards and deal out all the cards and have all these phase 1 cards, phase 2 cards, phase 3, battle in the middle of it, everyone's working on their own individual wonder, which is a bigger game. But Seven Wonders Architects says, no, there are no phases. You just play one giant round, and there are certain times where you activate the call for battle, and when that happens, you just do it, and then you reset everything, and then you have another battle. Maybe, if you want to, if people take the cards to battle, you don't actually have to have a certain number of battles in this game. Really clever. It's player activated. And then the other thing is that you can take a card from either the face-up pile between you and your player to your right, or between you and your player to your left. Then you have a third choice. Do I want the top-down, face-down card from the center? And the center just has all these cards that everybody's player's decks have. So, that's it. You choose a card, you add it to your area, and then you do the thing that it says if it activates something. You have to get pairs of the green cards, or 3 different ones. Blue cards, really cool, you just get victory points, or the cat. And if you get the cat, you get to look at the top card of the deck in the center and go, I don't want that one. And you put it back, or you grab it, you're like, yeah, I definitely want this one. And plays just are so fast. You take a card, your turn. That's it. You just add and you just keep stuff here. And if you can build at the end of your turn, you build a level of your pyramid. There are 5 stages of everyone's pyramid, and you either get same cards or different cards, and their resources are all the same. No difference between the gray resources and the brown resources. They're all the same. They're just resources. Done. It's simplified Seven Wonders, but in a really, really fun way. I like it. I like it a lot. It is my number 5. My number 4 pick is Whirling Witchcraft. I might have talked about this too much already on the channel, but it just is good, and the more I play it, the more I want to play it. Every time we play Whirling Witchcraft, we play more than one time in that gaming session, sometimes up to 3 times, because the games are really fast. And once you get that first time and you teach a new player, after the first game, they picked it up. And you want to play again right away because you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I got overwhelmed with frogs, or I got overwhelmed with the little roots, the little white root cubes. Whatever it is, you want to try again, and you maybe want to try with these specialty witches. You know, you don't want to play with the initiatives. Even though I think the initiative power, which is everyone's basic witch power, is really good. Like, you get to just discard your hand and draw 4 new cards because you're really, really needing a way to kind of use up cubes from your workbench. It's a clever game where you have a lot of player interaction with the people to your right and left. You're either passing cards to one or cubes to the other, and your whole goal is to overwhelm the opponent to your left with extra cubes that they can't place into their workbench. Every time they can't place one, it comes back to you and you get a victory point. That threshold to trigger the end of the game is 5 or more. It's so straightforward, really, really fun. I can't say enough good things about Whirling Witchcraft. My number 3 pick is So Clover. I can't tell you how many times I played this. It's been too many. I have played it into the dozens and dozens. I mean, it's a lot. And each game is short, but you are essentially taking as much time as you need to deliberate with your fellow players, because this is a cooperative word association game. It's endlessly playable because the little tiny cards you get have 4 words on them, and you will rarely, if ever, get the same combination on your clover every single time you play. I like to describe So Clover as a mix between Codenames and Just One. And I think that So Clover actually adds more of that interesting dynamic conversation that Just One kind of doesn't allow you to do, because you can only write a word, and then that word has to be what you give as your clue. Now in So Clover, each individual player is writing down 4 different clues that connect 2 words each in a clover shape. And then they pass that off to the group, and then the group has to deliberate, once those little tiles are gone, where do those tiles go? But the trick is you throw in a random one that kind of messes up your plans and probably gets in the way of them fully figuring it out. But you still can figure it out as long as you talk it through and you are really working together. It's a great, great cooperative game that I just absolutely see coming up again and again. 3 to 6 players, fantastic, really stealing the spotlight of 2021 for me. Moving on to my number 2. This one kind of surprised me a little bit how high it is, but the thing is it just keeps coming back and back and back, and I keep playing it with people, and I keep just enjoying it so much. Now, the game is Cascadia, and in this game you have a choice. There is a disc that's available to you which depicts a particular animal, and you have a tile that goes underneath it, and each tile is paired with a disc, and that tile is a terrain type. You are picking one of those combinations and then adding it to your own player area, trying to create the patterns necessary to maximize the victory points for that particular game. Now, the victory point conditions change based on what animal cards you draw. So if you're drawing the hawk card, there's I think 5 cards in the base game. You draw this one particular hawk card, you want your hawks to be configured in a particular way. So that means you're going to design your individual playing area with your hawks one apart within eye distance or in one giant contiguous line. And you're going to do the same thing with the bears and with the salmon and with all of the different animals. but you're also trying to make sure that your terrain are grouped in the different terrain types, because you're going to count the amount of terrain that shows up on contiguous sections at the end and get points for each of those. And there's majority value too. The thing that makes this cool is you can get pine cones, and pine cones give you a chance to kind of mess with that combination of the animal with the terrain type. You can either flush them and refill, you can take different combinations, or you can just keep them for victory points at the end of the game. This is a very replayable game. It's a very friendly game. I think it's a really, really strong entry-level tile placement game. If I'm sharing this with people, they're enjoying it. They're having a good time. It's very accessible. It's a really, really solid game from 2021. Before I get to my number one game of 2021, I want to share with you my surprise stinkers. Now, these are games that surprised me at how much I disliked them or just didn't enjoy playing in one way or another. So in no particular order, my first surprise stinker is Umbravia. I kind of wanted to like this, and I think I found the swings just a little bit too rough in this game. So there's a bidding mechanism and then a placing mechanism and then a majority choice. And so players can set off a real string of fortunate events that other players essentially don't get, and it just keeps happening. These things can keep happening. There's not necessarily any balance with the way that those things happen, and so while I get it, while I understand it, while I see that it has a lot of potential to be really interesting, for me it's a little bit too abstract, and I also feel like those swings of luck and balance are not there for me to fully enjoy. Next, I was really surprised by how much I disliked Lost Cities, the dice game. I wanted to like it so much. I think Lost Cities is a phenomenal two-player game. It is right there at the top with some other fantastic two-player games. It was one of the first games that my husband taught to me when we met each other, and I really, really enjoyed it. It's a fun puzzly thinker, and it's a great two-player game. So when we got the dice game, I was just so frustrated by how crazy the dice can be, and how, again, just too much luck in one particular direction or another, and so it didn't feel like the choices I was making were meaningful, and I didn't like the way that left us feeling. And whoever won or lost at the end, it didn't matter, because we all kind of felt similarly about the way the game just felt and the way the game went. So for me, Lost Cities, the dice game, well, stinker from 2021. I also wasn't the biggest fan of Rocket Men, and I know it's Martin Wallace, I really enjoy his games, but for me, Rocket Men had too much luck swing. And if you want to find out more about how I think the game could maybe work a little bit better, you can check out my video on my suggestions for house rules to make Rocket Men function a little bit better, in my opinion. I've had people voice in the comment section for that video that they find that their experience hasn't been my experience. So just don't worry too much about my take on it. If you've played the game and you really enjoy it, fantastic. For me, the luck and the swing with the card draws and with the card selections coming out, and with the way that the cards flip when you're going on an expedition to Earth, the moon, or Mars, it just didn't work for me. Another game that I thought I would really enjoy because of the designer, Stefan Feld, was Kokopelli. I did not necessarily like that game. I would play it again just to give it some more time and some more effort and tries. I get it, again, I understand it. I think it has some really interesting choices, but I also feel like sometimes there are combinations and choices and draws that you get that just simply leave you with some real bad actions, and you sit there and watch your opponents make, get the greatest combination and do this and do that and play over here and play on theirs and grab up all of the cool bits by finishing particular columns first, and I'm sitting over here with like a card combination that just gets me nothing. And every time I think I can play on somebody else's section, which you can play on your opponent's, sides on just like the edges, they finish a column and then I can't play there. or they clean it out and they do something else with it. And so I just constantly felt like I was a step or two behind everyone else and not having as effective choices and turns because of just the random card draw and the random card placement of my first, columns that I selected. So I think it just might be a balance issue, and I think it might just be a poor first time playing the game. But I did not enjoy Cocobelli. And lastly, I didn't necessarily enjoy my game playing The Hunger, which to me felt like a kind of reskin of Clank, and I really, really like Clank. And I think that it's a solid game. I like Press Your Luck a lot, but I also like having a Press Your Luck game that really does give you the chance to get home. And I think that I didn't necessarily enjoy the experience of playing. It seemed like the turns took a long time sometimes for players to get through their cards, even though you only get to play 4 cards on your turn, which seemed like very little at the beginning. But I feel like there were just some real raw blech when we played The Hunger, and I guess I just wanted to play Clank Legacy instead. And it just kind of made me want to play something that I was having a better time playing than The Hunger. Okay, you've been waiting a long time for me to get to my number 1 game of 2021. I will hesitate no longer. It is The Initiative. I really liked this game. And the reason why it's my number 1 is not just because I had an experience playing 14 games of The Initiative in a story campaign mode. It's because I found out there's even more. The designers in this provided a way to continue playing the game after you finish the campaign, and I find that to be just so smart and so cool. And while I was playing the game, I loved the cooperative nature of it. I loved how the actions worked, where you played cards and you went in ascending order and you had special actions that your players were allowed to do on their turn. I loved the maps. I loved the way that those tiles were randomly placed out in the board. Every single game that we played had a totally different code and a totally different puzzle, and I just can't begin to wrap my mind around how someone makes this game, let alone how I could have just such a wonderful experience playing it. It's the neatest thing I've experienced in a long time. Just the coolest. And so if you want a code-breaking, puzzly, cooperative adventure that keeps on giving after you finish with the really cool comic book story, do The Initiative, play The Initiative. I'm so glad that a colleague at my college told me and told Lewis about this game, and then we said, sure, let's go grab it. And then we just had a great time with it. It's fun, it's just delightful, and it is my number 1 of 2021. So there you have it. You've got my top 10. You also have 5 games that are new-ish. And you also have my surprise stinkers list. Let me know in the comments below what you think, if you've played these, if you like them, what your top 10 list is. And while you're watching the credits here at the end, I will share with you my 5 runners-up, essentially that 11 through 15 that just barely missed my top 10 of 2021 that I would still highly recommend. So, have a great end to 2021, and I will see you next year in 2022. Bye, everybody.